Could you imagine saving $200,000 when you're buying your home? Are you wondering how somebody could buy a home with zero conditions? I'm Pat Nadeau with the Nadeau Real Estate Group, and today I'm going to tell you how I've seen it done. Could you imagine saving $200,000 when you're buying your home? I've seen it done when people buy with no conditions. Now, I'm not advising that this is something that you do, but I have seen it done and it can be effective if you're willing to risk it. How I've seen it done, first of all, the most common time you see somebody going with no conditions is usually in a super competitive situation. So when there's multiple offers on a property, if we go back to the COVID times, we're talking about when there was 5, 10, 20 offers on a home. Realtors would list a home on a Monday. They would wait till the Friday to even look at any offers. So you had to make sure that your offer was as competitive as possible. So this is how people were doing it. They would do their due diligence, all their due diligence ahead of time. So all the classic conditions, financing, inspection, insurance, all those things, they checked all those boxes to the best of their ability before they even wrote the offer. Second thing that they had to make sure they could do is buy within their budget. If you're approved for $700,000 and you look at a $600,000 home, then at least if something goes wrong, it's in the budget to account for something that goes wrong. If you miss something in inspection or a property doesn't appraise as high as you expected it to and you have to close the gap with cash, buying within your budget and buying within your means, well within your means, is one thing that I've seen people do in order to buy a home with no conditions. The biggest concern that I've seen is usually with the appraisal that I just mentioned. So if you buy a property and it doesn't appraise as high as your offer is, so let's say you go in at $600,000 and it only appraises at $550,000, you have to come up with $550,000 in cash to close that gap in order to be able to actually physically close on the home. Inspections, doing inspections ahead of time. So in that week of time between the Monday and the Friday, buyers would try to go through when they had time with an inspector and quickly do an inspection on the home. So that wasn't a condition they had to do after the fact. So again, like they'd have to pay an inspector to go ahead of time and they're not sure 100% that they're gonna win this property. So going through and seeing what the risks are. And when you're on a country property that's a home inspection, well inspection, septic inspection, etc., there's lots of things that you got to make sure are okay so that you're comfortable with it before you close on the home. The thing with an inspection is I think people don't realize that inspections are not pass-fail. So it's up to you and your discretion what you're okay with. If you see that a septic is completely failed, that's a huge item that's going to cost you a lot of money to replace. But you may be okay with that, or at least you can factor that into your offer. Another thing is making sure that you can get insurance on the home. So talking to your insurance broker and making sure as much of that is fulfilled as possible, making sure that your ducks in a row with financing. And if you have a home to sell, either making sure that that's home is sold before, or honestly taking the risk on, we're going to sell our home after the fact and we know that we're going to get, here's the bottom number that we're going to get for our home. We know that we can close the gap. In the end, there is a ton of risk with buying a home with no conditions, but those are some of the ways that I've seen it done. And no matter what, there's one thing that I always say when you're buying real estate: more information equals less stress. So whether you're buying a home with no conditions or you're putting all the conditions in the world, the more information you have on the process and that home, the less stress you're going to be in making that offer. If you want to find out more about how properties are sold with no conditions, or you want to talk more about just how offers work in general, you know how to reach me.